The rain lashed against the window pane, mirroring the storm brewing inside Sarah. She stared at the small, clear baggie in her trembling hand, a battleground of desire and despair. For years, she'd carried the shame of her addiction like a scarlet letter, convinced it was a moral failing, a weakness of character. Every judgmental glance, every whispered condemnation had reinforced that belief, driving her deeper into the shadows. But Dr. Evans, with her kind eyes and gentle voice, had offered a different perspective. Sarah, addiction is an illness, not a moral disorder. Your brain chemistry has been altered. Much like a diabetic's pancreas fails to produce insulin. The words had been a revelation, a lifeline in a sea of self-loathing. Yet, the path to acceptance was fraught with the agony of grief. Sarah grieved for the person she once was, the ambitious student, the reliable friend, the daughter who hadn't caused her parents endless worry. She grieved for lost opportunities, for shattered trust, for the life that addiction had stolen. Each clean day was a tiny victory, but also a raw reminder of what she had lost. The memories, sharp and painful, would flood her, and she would weep for the choices she couldn't unmake. Then there was the diversion. She'd been clean for 6 months, a monumental achievement, but a sudden, devastating layoff, coupled with a fight with her estranged sister, had cracked her fragile resolve. The craving, once a distant echo, roared back to life, a monstrous entity demanding to be fed. She fought it for hours, pacing her small apartment, hands clenched, sweat beading on her forehead. But the insidious whisper, promising a moment of peace, grew louder until it drowned out everything else. The moment the drug entered her system, it wasn't the blissful escape she remembered. Instead, it was an immediate visceral shock, an allergic reaction. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic bird desperate to escape. Her skin crawled, prickling with an unbearable itch, and a cold sweat drenched her. Her stomach churned, threatening to revolt. Her mind, instead of finding the promised oblivion, became a chaotic kaleidoscope of fear and regret. It was as if her body, once conditioned to crave the substance, now rejected it violently, a biological scream of protest. The initial high was overshadowed by an overwhelming sense of physical revulsion and a crushing wave of despair. In the aftermath, curled on the bathroom floor, shivering and nauseous, Sarah understood. This wasn't about willpower or a lack of moral fiber. This was her body, her very biology reacting with desperate alarm to a substance it now recognized as poison. This wasn't a choice. It was a desperate struggle against a deeply ingrained illness, the grief, the allergic reaction, the relentless cravings. They were all symptoms of a hijacked system, a testament to the profound physical and psychological grip of addiction. And in that moment of profound illness, a new seed of hope was planted, the understanding that healing, like any illness, would require treatment, compassion, and a fierce, unyielding fight for her life back. This has been a Sharri Plaza presentation. The allergic reaction had been a brutal, undeniable truth, a physical manifestation of what Dr. Evans had been saying. It stripped away the last vestiges of Sarah's self-condemnation, replacing it with a grudging, then growing understanding. This wasn't a punishment for a lack of moral fiber. It was a symptom of a deeply rooted illness. The path forward was far from easy. Recovery, Sarah learned, wasn't a sudden cure, but a journey of remission, much like managing a chronic disease. There were good days and bad, periods of stability punctuated by intense cravings that felt like physical attacks. Each craving triggered that same allergic response, the racing heart, the clammy skin, the intense nausea, a constant reminder of how her body now rejected the very thing it once craved. It was a perverse kind of protection, her own system fighting against itself. Sarah began attending therapy regularly, diving into the trauma that had fueled her addiction. She learned coping mechanisms, healthy ways to process the grief that still clung to her like a shadow. She grieved the childhood she felt she'd lost to early neglect, the opportunities addiction had stolen, and the trust she'd broken with her family. But alongside the grief, she slowly started to feel hope bloom. She found a support group where others shared similar experiences, their stories echoing her own struggles with self-blame and the revelation that addiction was an illness. One evening, after a particularly challenging therapy session, Sarah called her mother. For years, their conversations had been strained, filled with unspoken accusations and resentment. "Mom," Sarah began, her voice trembling, "I need you to understand something. What I went through, it wasn't because I didn't love you or because I was a bad person. It was an illness. My brain was sick and it made me do things I never would have done otherwise." There was a long silence on the other end, and Sarah braced herself for the usual skepticism. But then her mother's voice, softer than she'd heard in years, came through the phone. I think I'm starting to understand, honey. Dr. Evans explained some of it to me, too. It's just so hard to see your child hurting themselves and not know why. That conversation was a turning point. It wasn't a magical fix, but it was the beginning of reconciliation built on a new foundation of understanding. Sarah continued her recovery, celebrating small victories and navigating setbacks with a newfound resilience. The allergic reaction still occurred if she even considered diverting, serving as a stark physical deterrent. They were painful, but in a strange way they were also a blessing, a constant reinforcement that her body was fighting for its own survival. Sarah's story became one of profound transformation, not just from addiction to sobriety, but from a life shrouded in shame to one illuminated by self-compassion and acceptance. She learned that while the scars of addiction might always remain, they were no longer marks of moral failure, but rather testament to her survival against a formidable illness. This has been a Sharri Plaza presentation.